Good morning. Now I'm ready for the next step in my catamaran build, and that is to start assembling the panels that I have made. So let's start with that. I need to prepare these bulkheads as well. I need to make a hole in them for two reasons. The first is to be able to access the area behind once the panels are glued in place. And the second is to make the hull less heavy. Here in the top I need to leave more material to carry the load from the crossbeam. I settle for 4 cm as a compromise between strength and weight. After measuring out the distance, I can connect the dots. This will be the weakest point in the bulkhead, where the load of the center of the crossbeam will have to be carried by 2 distant pillars at each hull edge. Thus I leave 4 cm of standing plywood to carry the load. At the side of the hull less material is needed, as the force from the crossbeam acts downwards. The load will be spread on a large section of the hull side, with the bulkhead acting as a stabilizing pillar. A 2 cm thick side should be enough. Now I start to remove material. I make a hole at the edge and flip the board. To get a nicer exit hole. Now I have a starting point for the jigsaw. Here in the very bottom I just leave enough material to keep the frame together. I will rest the bulkhead in glass. And glass do not take 90 degrees bends well. Thus I round off the edges of the bulkhead and continue with the next bulkhead. The tape that I put on to prevent permanent gluing with the hull needs to be removed before I can glue the frame to the hull. As the tape has been around several months, it's hard to remove. Some of the glue has penetrated into the wood, and I need to remove the glue with some rough sanding, also on the sides of the bulkhead. Inside sanding to correct the jigsaw tracks and round off the edge. Finishing off with some hand sanding before dry fitting the bulkhead. I will glue the edges together with glass. Thus the edges of the panels needs a light sanding. Otherwise I will not get a good bond with the epoxy. I do this with the belt sander as far as possible. A 40 grit paper is the next tool to sand the turning edge. I also use the same paper on a soft sponge to reduce some unevenness in the panel. It will be hard to do this when the panels are glued together. Tape on the hull edge also needs to be removed. The glue is very stuck to the laminate, but I will be able to remove most of it by hand, and the rest with the belt sander. I also make sure to sand down any glossy parts of the epoxy, as this edge will also be included when I glue the panels together. As it's so warm outside, I can't wear my standard overall. And suddenly I get stuck. The sweater has got stuck in the belt sander. And I can't get it out of the sander. Very frustrating. As I need the sander for the rest of the build. I have to take a break here to figure this out. Hopefully I can release something next week. This is the result at this moment.